as a business owner, I didn't force my employees, and I'm not going to force another business to do the same thing.
As for me, I was retired, but what I did do was I donated thousands of masks for those that were in hysteria. I did not change my lifestyle, and I gave a considerable amount of TV interviews and newspaper interviews because nobody in the police department were willing to do it.
March of 2020, my mother died. She died the day before the emergency was declared. So my mom died of COVID, and she said to me, "Don't get vaccinated." And I too was not vaccinated. Never believed in it. I was living in Brickell at the time, and when the restaurants were allowed to open, I still continued to live my life, protected best I could, but I continued to live my life. The police department, I think COVID was the beginning of the end for us. It changed us, police work, law enforcement, because we had to be careful. Law enforcement people were dying, fire people were dying. We didn't know this monster we were dealing with, and I saw it firsthand. And it was the beginning, but we were forced, and I don't know here who will come out and say it, but Danielle Levine Cava basically put the pressure on officers that if you didn't get jabbed, you may not have a job. In fact, as we can see, military people, the whole nation, people lost their jobs because they refused to get injected. So that was the beginning. So, March of 2020 changed everything, and we're living today the consequences of what that became, and we need to just forget that. Let's move forward now that we know what the issues were and the fact that this was all a scam as far as I'm concerned. And it continues to be a scam because I still see people wearing masks. So I don't understand that, but we respect each other.
I was the public information officer at that time with the Florida Highway Patrol, and we basically, everybody had to work. We had to wear masks, work with the command staff as to staffing, that we provided troopers to all the testing sites. We also assisted, at that time I was also assigned to Lieutenant Governor based on what was going on, so I was able to provide the information to everyone out there that was so concerned at that time, whereas to they could go and get tested, the sites that were available, as to the staffing also information. So at the end of the day, it was a tremendous responsibility to be able to constantly be providing that information to people that really had a lot of questions and we didn't have all the answers. But we worked with the people that were going through. Some people wanted to get vaccines, some didn't. We had several incidents where long lines, and we had Tropical Park was a perfect example. We had to send additional troopers out there to maintain the peace. So it was something that I hope we never go through, but it really taught me as a law enforcement, that we needed to have patience with this. And it's, once again, it's about getting ready for things. We've learned from that. If something like this should ever come about, law enforcement should be much, much better prepared before they make those decisions that were made that cost, in many cases, chaos.
I was retired, separated from service at the time of the pandemic, running my security and private investigation company. Security guards, it was business as usual. As we well know, that this was a 2020 plot, and be prepared because 2024, something else might be coming our way. Unfortunately, we won't be in office till 2025. But with that being said, it's what this gentleman talks about. We must protect the constitutional right of each and every citizen. That's what we're here for, and that's what we're working for.
Okay, thank you all. We have another question. Hold please just for a moment. We have another question here from the gentleman. Question for the Senate.
They've addressed immigration. You guys have addressed, the COVID situation. And for a long time, at least us young people, 32, I don't know what that is, but we've seen time and time again, you guys are saying the right things, but we've seen the Republican Party and a lot of our Republican leaders kind of fold under the pressure, whether it's COVID, whether it's immigration. So you guys are saying the right things, but if you guys can give me one example in your careers where, let's say your superiors told you have to do this, and morally, your conviction said no, and you did the complete opposite. Have you guys, because you guys can say the same things over and over again, but for the last 20, 30 years in our county, we've not seen our side of the aisle, do much.
Hold on, let's begin in order.
Oh,
Let's begin in order.
Is it too many Democrats in control, like Cava and the state attorney, they're all Democrats, so.
Well, unfortunately, we come from military, pretty much. You might call our departments military, where we have to follow the SOPs and rules and orders that are in place. Not that we like them, not that we don't rebut them. As a hostage negotiator, I was faced with showing up on a scene where somebody had the knife to a child's throat, the father. First one to arrive with the other commanders, and they say, no, start negotiations. Unfortunately, I had to stand down with our SOPs and wait for the SWAT team to get in place. Now, there are strategical things that come into play when that happens, as Mario can tell you. But yeah, there are some unfortunately, there's some state statutes on laws that we don't like, but we have to enforce every law that's in the book. And we have to provide by our standard operating procedures. Doesn't mean we're not going to change some of those once we become sheriff. So we come from a military organization.
Look, as a PIO, I had an incident. You guys all saw it in the news. It was the demonstration that the Cubans took on the turnpike, and they blocked the turnpike. They went out there traffic and they blocked it completely. And it was hours and hours. We had the county went out there, our units went out there, our tactical team went out there, and they called me out there to go out there and do whatever I can to open up as quickly as possible. I went out there. They gave me a bullhorn. I had the commander for the tactical team say, hey, we're giving you 15 minutes, and in 15 minutes, we're going to have to do what we got to do, because they had already given them plenty of time, and it was really an incredible inconvenience. And we're blocking the turnpike. Imagine you trying to get to work, you trying to get to the hospital, Kendall Regency. So I went out there, and the commander said 15 minutes, I'm just going to go ahead and do what I have to do. And I say, hey, listen, give me more time. I could get this done. Well, I went out there, and through my efforts and being able to communicate as a PIO, I was able to convince him to open up. And that would have been a situation where if he would have taken action, I would have probably stopped him and said, hey, I need more time. Well, he saw what was happening. He saw that I was making progress. And with the efforts not only of myself, but the county and our units, we were able to open up the highway. Nobody got hurt. Nobody got arrested. Miami didn't get a black eye, because that's the last thing we need in the news. And that's exactly what the Cuban government wanted. They wanted a confrontation between law enforcement here and those individuals. So at the end of the day, it was a win-win situation. But if I would have gone against that commander, that's a situation that I might have been written up.
When I first spoke, I told him, I said to you, the only thing I've ever wanted to be in my life was a police officer. And I never could ever imagine, having become a police officer at the age of 40, that I'd ever leave this profession. However, to answer, sir, your question as to making the right choices, because everybody's talking about, oh, we're going to do this, we'll do that, but when it comes down to ethics and doing the right thing, in March, same year as my mom passed, I was on a detail in the Brickell area where we were doing homeless stuff, and the COVID thing was going on, and there was a gentleman and his wife urinating at a bus stop, at a public bus stop, and people were in arms as to what are we going to do about it. And I went in, and when I was going to take action, after a lot of hesitation from everybody, including my supervisor, who told me, don't do it, you're going to touch them, I said, yeah, I'm going to do all these things. He said, just don't do it. So I said that day to him, I said, I pulled out my badge, right? It says police officer, so we're no longer doing police work. And he basically, that was at 10 o'clock at night. The next morning, actually that moment was that moment that I said, I will not do this job again. I will not risk my life, do the things that I need to do if I don't have anybody to back me up. So the next day I resigned, and I walked in, and they were very surprised, but he understood what's up, and I went through the ranks. My sergeant, to the lieutenant, to the captain, to the major, all the way up. In the history of Miami-Dade County, ever. It'll be an independent person. So Daniel Levine Cava, who was mentioned earlier, brought in James Reyes from BSO, a corrections officer. A man who is not a police officer. In fact, it is he and also Susan Corey, who is also a Democrat, is not a police officer. No. They shouldn't be sheriff. They have no idea what it is to put on a badge and a gun and have people look at you as a target. They have no clue. So what ends up happening is she puts James Reyes originally as the director of corrections. Matter of fact, and it upsets me that she had fine officers, Miami-Dade police officers, that she could have chosen to put in that position, and she chose not to do that. That's an insult. That's a slap in the face of all you gentlemen who are majors in our department. As far as
Let's
corrections,
not forget the lady.
That's right.
you didn't see me. I was doing this. I do. And you know, I was looking at you. So what ends up happening, and yes, you were cheated is big time. So as far as he was in that position, maybe a month, maybe 2 months at most. Then all of a sudden, Freddie Ramirez attempts suicide. Now, Freddie Ramirez was a Republican not long ago, and then went to independent. And then when the mayor said to him, I need somebody to protect our interests, she made him a Democrat, promised him all the money, and made him a Democrat to run for sheriff. So as far as that's concerned, now everything plays out. Now Reyes was the obvious choice to bring in now to run for sheriff. And she's put all of her resources and all the money into that. And she's going to continue doing whatever she can to make sure that Republican sheriff definitely does not come about, although I do feel that she doesn't have a chance in pulling this off. So the courts, that'll be taken care of. Because the sheriff, by the way, the sheriff doesn't need the permission. I don't need permission. I'm going to take corrections, and I will have everything. I'm the public safety guy. That'll be the person who's going to have all three: law enforcement, corrections. Everything is going to be.
How are you going to take it?
Good question.
Well, the Constitution will allow us to do that. The sheriff will decide how he wants to do that.
I'm just
No one
wondering
has
how
said no.
seamless the whole process is going to be.
It's not going to be seamless. It's going to be a huge transition.
It's going to be
And
a
it's
huge
going to require a lot of
transition,
people to know.
I know, I just.
But the sheriff's vision will have to be to have all three, to be able to do things correctly.
Okay,
Next question.
To answer, I'd like to answer his direct
but his
question.
next.
Okay, yeah, that's fine, okay.
Okay.
So, the courts and the interference that we have. So you heard a lot about public corruption, but it makes it sound like you have mayors and commissioners, doing home invasion robberies, doing purse snatches. That's not what's happening here. The majority of the stuff.
What I'd like to do is, first of all, thank you all for throwing your hat into the ring. And I would like to emphasize the extreme critical importance of what you're doing and the position you're running for. And for that, I'm going to underline a little bit how in grave danger we are. What sense? The world's in crisis. The nation's in crisis. There's 10 to 15 million illegal aliens in the country. Hundreds of thousands of them are military-age men. Many of those are Chinese or Islamicists. But I have to say up front, to be a law and order sheriff, that is excellent, but it's also yesterday. And why am I saying that? Because that's like basic. Even the mayor of Miami Beach is a law and order mayor and candidate. Okay, so yeah, so that's amazing. But so what I'd like to move things to a little bit is the idea that you have an extremely important constitutional role, and that is. And let me add one other thing to the world in crisis and the nation in crisis. On top of all those problems, we have a government which has decided that over half her citizens are enemies, okay? Domestic terrorists or what have you. And so that means that we probably have a whole bunch of law-breaking, constitution-breaking federal officers who, when they have an opportunity, may be coming to our county to do what they want to do, including seizing guns or whatever. So, constitutional sheriff, my question for you all is, have you been able to read a book by Chris Ann Hall, Sovereign Duty, which touches this subject? There's also Sheriff Richard Max, the Constitutional Sheriff, America's Best Hope. And I want to encourage you all, because in my view, thank you for mentioning Constitutional Sheriff, your role is critical. You are the last line of defense to protect our freedoms in the county, and that means you need courage and you need to be able to stand up. These stories are of sheriffs who have actually gone against the feds because they said, that's unconstitutional, I'm going to protect my citizens, you can't make me do that, I'm not going to let the feds do this or that. And
In
they-
Arizona, the
and they
famous
paid-
sheriff, what's
yeah.
his name?
Arpeo.
Arpeo, and he's been
Rainy
attacked
John
and
here.
harassed.
So
That's
they
good.
paid, and it wasn't easy. So I want to ask, do you, each of you have the courage and the fortitude to stand up against federal officers if they come to this county to do mischief and unconstitutional activities?
Okay, we're gonna start from here. 2 minutes.
So
each.
far, Ben.
No, 1 minute, just do 1 minute. 1 minute.
And the only candidate so far that says that we are going to enforce immigration laws under 287G, we're going to sign a memo of understanding on day 1 with the federal government, and we're going to enforce these laws. I think it's important. I don't know if you were here from the beginning, but I'm going to bring back a Pledge of Allegiance in every roll call. That's going to reiterate that we are here. Our core function for every citizen is freedom of speech, enforce that, the right to due process, and the right to protect against illegal search and seizures. And I think a lot of policemen went away from the basics. I'm going to get back to basics. We're going to enforce all of the federal laws that we can in the books with these immigrants, and we're going to stop the crimes beforehand. We need to identify them, and we need to get them on file.
But the Constitution is the law of the land, folks. That is the law of the land. As a sheriff, the first thing we do when we get sworn in as police officers to defend the Constitution, the state laws, and all the laws that apply to us. The situation that you may have is you may have a governor, and I've read instances where people have gone against the governor and they have lost in elections, but they did the right thing. They stood for the Constitution. I am prepared to do that as sheriff. If, let's say, Governor DeSantis should make whatever, like, I don't think he will go against Amendment 2, I will fight against that, because you know what? I'm a strong believer in the Constitution. The Constitution is the law of the land, and if we have one responsibility to the people that we serve, is to protect that Constitution, because the United States was built on the Constitution, and we should stand firm with it. I'm a big proponent of the Constitution, and support it 100%.
These are the crime stats as of just a couple weeks ago. We talk about experience. All these people talk about experience. They're wonderful, and that sounds all wonderful. But experience without result is failure. And we have all been failed, including us, officers. So when they talk about experience and all these wonderful things that they say they're going to do, and they haven't done it. Quite honestly, they haven't done it. So yes, I will have the fortitude to do that, and I will stand. It doesn't have to be a federal agent. It can be anybody. If you're breaking the law, if you are a lawbreaker, a crime fighter, you're going to go to jail. And the violent criminals are going to stay in jail. And we do have, the sheriff will have control to do these things. And that's getting up there and fighting. And I love to do that. I've mentioned on many occasions in many forums. I am a crime fighter. I don't have all these fancy titles. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a major. I'm not all these things. I was that guy on the road the whole career in a uniform, loving every minute of it, because that's what I am, I'm a crime fighter. So take away all the titles, I will have fortitude to become your sheriff. I look forward to doing just that. So that's not a problem.
My own department threatened to arrest me because I fought for the constitutional rights of an officer. So I am a strong proponent of that. I'm the only one that has ever called out any politician. I support the good ones and I attack the bad ones. And we got a lot of bad ones. And I'm the only one, it's funny that you use the word constitutional because I love that word. I am the only one amongst the whole group, Democrat or Republican, that is endorsed by 2 constitutional sheriffs. I am very careful who endorses me. I don't want politicians or people that are going to make a buck or think they're going to make a buck off of my title. I have 8 or 9 police chiefs. I have a state attorney from Monroe County, a Republican state attorney. I have 2 constitutional sheriffs that are endorsing me. There's a reason. They're not endorsing other people. They're endorsing me. And I got to tell you, you might be able to tell, I'll use my position as a bully pulpit to those people who do not follow the Constitution, to those people who do not respect the law.
point that Arthur is trying to make, tell me if I'm wrong, is that you're gonna have a sheriff that's gonna stand up to the federal government ADC units working undercover in Miami-Dade County. Are you gonna stop that at 150%? And that's, tell me if I'm wrong, and that's what Arthur is trying to get. But we cannot allow other agencies coming in here to try to take control. That's what a constitutional sheriff is. And when you talk about standing up to people, I just stood up to the Coral Gables Commission where I live and work, because in the last 2 years, Coral Gables PD has lost 35 officers. There was only 4 speakers. One of them was me, criticizing the commission for not doing more for our police department. But that I'm doing it now. I did it when I was in law enforcement for many, many years. I stood up to a lot of different people. And John will protect me when he was the head of the PPA a lot of times. But according to that Arthur, we would stop the unauthorized, unofficial governmental actions within the county to make sure that the top law enforcement officers meet the constitutional sheriff. And that's what I
So, as part of my professional development over my career, I've graduated from the FBI National Academy in 2016, and I'm still active. I'm currently the first vice president of the Florida chapter. What that means is that I am an active member and continue to have training and resources at the national level. That allows me to keep my pulse on what is going on at the national level and learn and be prepared, right? And tap into that federal level of training and have those relationships and communication. So as the sheriff, having that is important, because we need to see what's going on at the national level to prepare and get ahead of it. We don't need to let it get here first, right? We can get ahead of it, number one. Number two is recognizing those situations, having a voice. As a sheriff, legislatively, we need to be able to see what the problems are and speak to them. So that when we start to see those kind of legislative changes at the federal level, we're screaming about it before. We don't need to wait until they're making these changes. Absolutely not. We can do that. As a sheriff, you have a legislative voice, which, by the way, right now, we do not have as a Miami-Dade Police Department. We don't. We tell downtown what we expect and need legislatively, and they say thank you very much, and they never use it again. Okay, so that's a very important part, that voice legislatively. And number three is, will I have the fortitude to do it? Absolutely. In fact, what I will tell you this is I will be the first one, and I'm pretty sure that it will be alongside my other Florida Sheriff's Association members, should anybody, let's say, threaten our right to bear arms right before there be a civil war in the state, because that's something that fundamentally belongs to us. We cannot do that, and standing sheriff from day one is where we need to be.
So I think, in short, because we're all repeating the same thing, that yes, we have it. I continue to say that you cannot manufacture what you've done in your career, a few months before the election. And again, I continue to say that the best indicator of future performance is past performance. And so if you talk about fortitude, we had a previous sitting director while I was the use of force subject matter expert for Miami-Dade County, and I did it for 18 years. And even though I had provided him opinions on certain use of force cases, he at one point decided that he no longer wanted me to review use of force cases because I always protected the officer, was what he said. Now, the problem is there's right and there's wrong. There's legally justified and not legally justified, and I'm not here to window dress. If the officer is justified, I'm going to unapologetically support him, and I don't care what the outcome is.